So, how has your definition or your idea of family changed over your lifetime?
Um, it changed a lot when I became a parent, because that flipped completely. Yeah, like when you're young, what is a family? You look up and you look up to your parents and your grandparents and your aunts and uncles, and all my cousins were mostly older than me, and it completely changes when you find yourself in this position of having to nurture someone and be completely responsible for them, um, and also like creating that with someone, um, and frankly, I mean, and that definition of family became even more stark, as my family started disintegrating, if you will, by bioseparation.
Mm-hmm.
I always, well, I've studied in anthropology, and so often, one of our tools for observation and like scientific tool is comparison and
Mm-hmm.
understanding who you are, but by what you are not,
Mm-hmm.
and by starting to having my family, my own nuclear family, being decomposing itself, like I really understood the importance that family that my family had, that my own nuclear family had in my own life, and how I was ready to sacrifice a lot for that family. I mean, of course, it's just transforming. We are still all close, the four of us. I have uh, two kids, 5 and 7, Fanek and Manis, with Mike. Um, One thing though, on in relation to the movie, you know, I think one of my favorite part is when Barbara looks at you and say, you know, welcome to the norm, and the norm is to not be in the norm, like, you know, is that like we all build our families as best as we can, and they're all, I mean, a lot of us, I think, are quirky, and or try to, I think maybe since the 60s, the family has tried to also reinvent itself, and then find, I don't know, new ways of still, combining, like, you know women's liberation, and going off to work, and love liberation, and if you fall in love with somebody else, you just go for it. And um anyway, I just want to say that I grew up in a household where at one point I lived in the same house with my mother and her boyfriend, whom she was pregnant with, and with my dad and his new partner at the time, which, you've lived it too. It's also not a novelty. Like, maybe it does happen more. Like, people have faith that, with understanding um, and I mean, yeah, like good relationship, and obviously it's people that have like things in common. At the very least, some of them have children in common, and though you guys didn't, so
Yeah.
I mean, anything. anything is possible. Yeah, go
So you used the word disintegrate, decompose, and transform to describe the change that your family was going through.
yeah.
So I get how were you processing that change at the time? Like how
When I was 11,
yeah,
or
whatever
in my
whatever point your experience of the nuclear family started to change. What did that? How did you um, sort of categorize that at the time, and then how do you sort of explain it to yourself now with regards to the subject of family? I mean, did it feel like family in the way you knew it was sort of falling apart or ending, or did
when I was a child.
yeah?
Um, it wasn't falling apart. It was more like exploding and expanding and um
And did you say, were you like, oh, like now I've got new parts
for
to my family? Like, it was it exciting in that way, or
um wow. I you know I think my coping mechanism at the time was to just really understand and explain, and so I just really rationalized everything, like okay, my parents met when they were really young and they evolved in being different people, because the partners they choose were like antipodes, like they had nothing in common, so I was just like, okay, it makes sense. And then my mom's partner wanted a kid, and I mean, in reality, nothing made sense, because that partner went on. He wanted a kid just for himself, so my mom was in front of this double bind of, um, if you make me a child, I will leave, and if you don't, I will leave as well. And um, I was 11, 12, and I don't think I had any ways of understanding. Like it's funny. I think I relate a little bit with who knew Haji. Like I in that I was very much living in adult environment because my parents had a restaurant, and my dad's girlfriend was a musician, and so there was always a lot of adults. And since my life wasn't going really well at school, I was hanging out with the adults a lot, but in the meantime I was still a child, like she said, and I couldn't really grasp what was all going on. So I just, it's also like, even though like you see that your friends have still like those strong structure, you know um I was in I was it was just my reality, my family, what was happening. And separation and divorce were common, so it's not like I was wondering what's going on. It was just like, yeah, they're separating, and then eventually like we went on living in different spaces. And um I don't think I had more reflection on family than that.
mm-hmm.
But I think that's why, like, I really, I think that's because I went through this. I think that's why, like, I was really willing to take a long time to try to work things out with the father of my children, because remaining a family, which means basically living in the same in the same place and living a life together, like creating, and like daily you know, and and you know what Haji's sister says, just the ability to helping each other out because you live in the same household. So the household is very uh, interesting. And the other particularity with my own life is that I gave birth to my two children in a household that were composed of 10 to 14 people. Um, I lived in a collective, and um, we were the first one having children among that group. We were the older people, and that created a lot of questions about like how is it gonna work? How like who's gonna be in charge of raising them, or who's gonna how people had a lot of I think we're anticipating a lot, like how the raising aspect and the disciplining, or the how authority would work, and how like where responsibility would fall, and um but you know it was hard. It's like becoming parent. It you can really never know how it's really going to be
Mm-hmm.
until you experience it. So um I remember, well, that was a long, long time ago, but when I first talked to the group and said that I really wanted to be a mother, um, someone in the group just felt like it was completely anti-revolutionary, because once you start having kids, then yeah, it focuses your energies, and it's true. If you know students are in the streets, and there's a reason for that, or then in local groups, or you know it's possible to do both, but you also see like people after their 40s and 50s becoming involved anyway.
And
um yeah.
in exploring that a little bit more, I mean, where do you? How, I understand where that assertion comes from, but how do you actually feel about it? The idea that
It's anti
revolution exists in in the public, like in public demonstrations, rather than the domestic realm, private
No,
realm.
but I personally, I completely disagree. Especially in the context that we were, where we were trying to, we were also experimenting with a different household that does not exist very much in the society, where like we were 10 adults living together with the intention and the desire to offer each other mutual aid, and comfort and support and friendship. And it was kind of funny to me, that and therefore raising children in such a different context, felt in a way revolutionary to me, like trying to find, yeah, like, I mean, they've developed their own relationship with adults that are much closer than just friends, and but in the meantime that are not their parents. So it's like, the grandparents often say that it's the best role, because you don't have to do you're not the authority, you don't have to do the disciplining, you just have the fun. And I feel like perhaps it's closer to that, um, the relationship that they have. Like, me and Mike are responsible for, you know are more the authority, though they do, when they need, um, the people intervene also, like in when if they fight or they do something dangerous, they will step in, but they don't have like the to give the structures, the structural help, and yeah, yeah,
I have another question.
yeah.
So do you think if you were trying to like define like a basic element of family, I guess for yourself or for anyone, I mean, do you think that children, or maybe more specifically intergenerational relationships or forms of dependency or interdependency
Mm-hmm.
are are essential to family?
Yeah. If interdependency is essential to family.
Yeah, well, I guess I said interdependency and within, between generations, or I guess there's two different thoughts. Like one is
Mm-hmm.
different ages, and the other is interdependency or dependency,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how you define. I'm sort of throwing out a number of different
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
things that could define family on their
But
own or in combination. But
I mean, when the collective was childless for the first 5 years, I mean, in many ways, we felt that we were family or we became family. I mean, it's like bonds that you know um, because in the groups and with certain people, you would say like, I wouldn't necessarily have seek you as a friend, but now you're family to me, and I have your um, well-being. I, you know is really important to me, like you. So therefore it's like a little bit like siblings that you don't necessarily choose, but you end up like wanting to fight, to defend them, and to be ready to step in, even if you're the first one complaining about your sibling. You're also the first one on the line if they get hurt. And um, so I don't know that the intergenerational, um, if it needs to be intergenerational to be a family. I think people the same age could be a family. Um, but I think the I really like the household idea, though. Of course, I mean, you know, we're like right now. I've addressed more like the family, like, yeah, the day-to-day family, like not like the extended family,
mm-hmm.
and which friends can be extended family and whatnot. But there's something about the living together, um, and therefore sharing closely a life, that becomes akin to, yeah, to kinship.
Thank you very much for taking the time to share your thoughts with me.
Very welcome. Thanks for the movie.